Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis and this is the very first video since the move. Now, we're going to be looking at the RODI mixing station. I'm going to show you my setup as well as my RODI filters, and the reason why I decided to do this video first is because I need to change out the anion resin here, and there's a lot going on. I'll explain why there's so many filters, and because I am running into a little bit of an issue here on the well, and I'm going to explain my thought process to fixing it and kind of the process of elimination we're going to go through to find the problem. So because I do need to change that DI resin out and make some water, because you can see that I am super low down there for auto top off and the NEM tank, so I figured I'd get this video done first. Now let's go ahead and take a quick look at the mixing station, and then we'll move over to the RODI setup. Now this is a dual 160 gallon mixing station. It's just on some 2x4 with I guess plywood platform. Nothing too crazy there, no bricks, nothing too extravagant. It does require me to, I mean, I'm not the tallest person in the world, but I probably have to get on a step ladder here or a step stool to fill that up. Well, salt's going to be in this one, but to fill that up with salt, but it's really not that bad. I didn't want it sitting directly on the floor just because I know that the stand is flat, doesn't have any imperfections. I don't have to worry about puncturing the containers. I don't really think it would, but you know, for the price of them, I probably don't really need to be risking it. Now, speaking of that, I will try to find a link and try to find the source in which I found these containers. They are the NSF certified water safe or human consumption barrels. I got them here locally, so I saved on shipping. So I saved about $350 on free shipping. I did have to drive about an hour and a half to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I think I paid about $800 for the two. They went ahead and drilled and gave me bulkheads. You just have to tell them what size you want, and I use those for the fittings here. So I recommend, I mean, I've been through those 55 gallon barrels. You guys see my DIY setup in the previous system. I've gone through some cheaper barrels, some used barrels, and it's just not worth it. Just go ahead and buy the food grade, water safe, excuse me, human consumption barrels for human consumption, and you'll be good to go. Just go ahead and get the good ones. Now, again, you are paying upfront costs, but if you think about it, what's the foundation of your reef tank? Your water, right? So why are we messing around and cheaping out? Just go ahead and get the appropriate barrels and you'll be good to go. And again, they are 160 gallons a piece, and given the issue that I found, I might have to buy another one, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So when it comes to setups with the plumbing, you guys were asking me, how am I going to clean this setup with the salt? And I'll explain that here in a second. But before, I want to show you how this actually works. So we have the mixing pump that I had on the previous setup here, nothing too fancy. That's going to be on a switch, which then allows me to pull water from the RODI side. So this is just RODI water. Allows me to pull water up into the saltwater mixing. I see my fingers messing with the zoom. And then I can turn off the bottom valve here, turn on this one, and open up this one, and I can just recirculate the water within this right container with the salt and get it to the temperature and the salinity that I want. And then when I'm ready to pump it to the frag tanks here, which you guys will see, I just turn this valve, take my little thingamajigger over to the tank, and we're good to go. Now, speaking of that, out of everything that's here in my parking garage, with the system here, the water system, and my packing bench, the only thing that's going to be left is the RODI. That's going to stay in here indefinitely, and I'm just going to pump water to the coral building, which you guys will see here in a future video. Now, I keep saying in the future video because there's a lot of content, and I'm going to try to do my best to get it all out in a timely manner, given the amount of projects that are going on. But anyways, back to the water system here. It's a very basic setup. There's nothing too fancy. I just use regular PVC from Home Depot, some bulkheads I got for like 10 bucks a piece off Amazon, and I reused my previous setup here when it came to my refilling. Nothing too fancy, and the reason why I did that is one, cost. I want to keep it as cheap as possible. Like I said, I put a lot of money into the barrels, which I wanted to do, but I wanted to keep everything else. So I reused the pump. I had some bulkheads that, I mean, some of these ball valves that I already had. I bought one or two extra, and then I used some PVC from Home Depot. Relatively cheap overall. I could have went out and got the color PVC and all the fancy stuff, but nope, this works. We're looking at function right now. We can worry about design and prettiness later on. So moving over to, oh, let me answer the question. How am I going to clean this? So one of the things that people have noticed is with the Instant Ocean, which is the purple box, which I use. I kind of moved away from reef crystals. I moved away from HW Marine. I've gone back to the purple box just because it works for me. So One of the downsides of that is it does get a little dirty. So my plan is, when I just need to clean this, I'll just disconnect these unions here on the ball valve. Very simple. Up here, and I'll just take the entire container outside and I'll just spray it with the hose and get out any kind of gunk and stuff. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. People are talking about adding special valves and all that stuff. Now, I'm just gonna disconnect it, drag it out there, and rinse it out with the hose. Okay, so moving over to the RODI setup here, you can see that there is quite a few chambers. I think we're at like 11 stages at the moment, something like that. I don't know. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 with the UV. Either way, it seems like a lot. Trust me, it's not. No, you do not need to have this many for your setup. I will explain why I'm doing it right now, at least until I can fix the issue that I'm having with my well water. Now, let's go to start from the beginning of the setup. I have a booster pump because I'm at about 40 PSI coming out of the well. I like to be at about 60 to 65, possibly 70. I can adjust it up here. Works out pretty good. So I am, again, I'm getting to about 65 and stable with the booster pump. Good investment. Again, before that I was at about 40, which is not ideal for what I'm looking for. Now, we're going through the very first filter here, which is a sediment filter. Now, if you guys remember my previous setup, the sediment filter, I had dual setups, dual sediment filters, because the city water was so dirty with the rust. It would, before I got filling up 160 gallons of RO in the previous place, it would literally turn both of the filters orange and rusty. It was pretty gross. But with this, I've already made 400 gallons and it's still crystal clear, or pretty darn close, because I do have a sediment filter on the water softener system on the house. So it works out pretty good. Now, we're going to go through 2 carbon blocks per usual. Then we're going to go through 2 75-gallon per day membranes, and then that will lead over to the DI, which we'll talk about here in a second. Now, one thing I want to note is I am at about 350 TDS coming in from the softener, and when I leave these membranes, I'm at about 10 before it gets into the DI, which is pretty good. I'll take that. I know you get a little bit higher TDS when you're running dual membranes. That's totally fine. 10, I'm not worried about it. When I'm at like 20, 30, 40, 50, that's where we start having issues, and you should probably address some filters and your DI membranes at that point. But so with that, let's go ahead and move on to the mass amount of DI, why it's set up this way, and explain the problem I'm having. So right off the bat, I want to say that I think I'm having a CO2 issue with my well water, which is very common. Elevated CO2. I've talked to the water softener providers company, and I'm going to be sending out some ICP tests here. Now, I do have to change out this anion DI resin and run some water, send out the 2 ATI tests, which one's going to be for the softener and then one for the DI. We'll talk about that here in a second. But either way, I am thinking that I have a elevated CO2 problem. Now, I am going to test that here later in the week by simply taking some water after my RO membrane. I'm going to then bubble it, or see what the pH is, and then I'm going to put an air stone in it for a few hours, then come back and test the pH and kind of see where we're at. Now, that will be an indication if I'm having issues with CO2, which is one of the leading causes of why the anion DI resin is getting burned up quickly. Because if you look, the cation has basically nothing, right? Then the anion, this chamber here made about 60 gallons. This finished off the rest of the barrel because there's already water in there, and you see there's just a little bit left. So I am burning through this anion resin. So we're looking at, to fill up an average 160 gallon barrel, we're looking at about 30 bucks worth of resin, which is not acceptable because I use a ton of water and that's not going to work out. So I have to find the problem. Now, after these 2 resins, we have the mixed bed, which is just the backup, which is standard for this. Now, if you guys remember on my previous setup, I just ran 3 canisters of the mixed bed because I didn't have this issue. But because, you know, I'm having issues with this particular, I think, CO2 or whatever it might be in the water, which we'll find out later after the ICP, I had to separate them just for being cost effective, right? Because why burn through the cation and pay double when it's just burning through one of the DI resins, right? So with that being said, I did order 2 of the ATI test kits. Let me see if I can find them here. So I did order 2 of these. I'm going to put one for my water softener. So I'm just going to test the water before it comes in to the DI resin, or sorry, into the RO system. I just want to get an idea of what it's going to be. And then I'm going to use the second one to test after the RO system, just to see what it looks like before going in to the DI. That will give me an indication of kind of what's going on. Ideally, I should have bought a third one just to test what's coming after the cation resin, just to really narrow it down. But at 50 bucks a pop, I was like, well, let's try 2 and see if we can find the issue. The water softener guys were like, yeah, just do 2 right now. We'll see what we get. We'll find out what's causing this, if it's either high phosphates or another mineral or something that might be in the water outside of CO2. Now, if these ICP tests come back and there's nothing there, then we know that it's and I test for the pH, and the pH gets elevated with the air stone. We know that it's a pH issue, which means I'm gonna have to buy another barrel. Now, luckily, I do have an extra one from the old setup, which I probably will put here or put somewhere else. And my plan is, if this ends up being the situation, is I'm going to take the water from my it's going to go from the softener in through my RO system, and then it's going to go into that first barrel. I'm going to throw air stones in there, bubble it for 24 hours, 48 hours, and then I'm going to pump that in through the DI resin, and then that will come into my next barrel, which will be ready to use. So if we can burn off that extra CO2, then we won't kill the resin, and then we can just pump it through, and we still get back to where we're going, save a ton of money. So that's the plan. If it works out, we'll find out, but just kind of a process of elimination and figuring out the issue. So the first thing we're going to do is send in these ICP tests. I'll give you guys an update on this and kind of what's going on. And either way, good or bad, if I find the solution or if I don't, I will tell you and let you know. But for now, I'm just going to throw on some more of this anion DI resin and make some water and sacrifice some money just because I do need it for the setup temporarily. Hey guys, real quick, now during the editing I realized I didn't show you the last chamber here, which is the UV sterilizer. Now, I don't technically need one of these since I have one already on the water softener, but because I already had it from the previous setup, and why not, it's not a big deal, I went ahead and added this as my 12th and final stage before coming over and dumping into the RO bin. With that being said, that is my mixing station. That is kind of what I got going on. And yeah, so with every situation in life, no matter where you move or what you do, there's always going to be hiccups, and this is just one of them. Thank God it's not a big one. Yeah, we're just working through it and see what happens. Now, when it comes to the setup here, I will give you guys a quick look. We are using 2 of the barrels. It's super blue. Sorry, 2 of the tubs, 2 of the 5 tubs at the moment. A 60-gallon tank from Petco, and it looks like my RAS is in the sump there. Now, when it comes to this setup, I did lose about 5 to 10% of my coral during the move. I did post some pictures on Instagram and Facebook. If you're not following me there, come over there, because you're going to get a lot more content and a lot quicker and updated than here on YouTube, at least for now. And yeah, so I did lose about 5 to 10%, which was to be expected during the move. Now that I got the lights dialed in and a bunch of stuff, you guys will see the setup in depth in another video. I don't want to go over it too much right now because we're already cruising on like freaking 10 or 15 minutes at the moment. So yeah, either way, everything is alive and doing well. Temporary setup, and yeah. So anyways, guys, that's about it for this video. I will see you in the next one, and appreciate the support. All right, peace.